Hey y'all, welcome back to Learning CAD. Bit of a new face, you may recognize me from the first video, but my name is Sarah Young. I'm the aerodynamics lead from Northwestern Formula Racing, and I'm super excited to be here with y'all. In this video, I'll be taking us through Unit 2, Part A, Advanced Sketching, Part 1. So I'm going to flip on over to SOLIDWORKS where I have a sketch already pulled up, and we're going to dive right into our first tool, Mirror Entities. So Mirror Entities lets us take any sort of rectangle, circle, line, any entity in our sketch, and mirror it across any axis. So for example, if I select my rectangle to mirror, and I'll pick the top plane to mirror about, you'll see a little yellow preview of what that'll look like of it mirrored across that top plane. You can also mirror it across things that you sketch yourself, like this line that I'm drawing right now. If you've watched Cameron's videos, you might remember that when we sketch, you want to try and stick to closed contours. So if you were to try and extrude this in your computer, you'd actually run into an error because this line here is an open contour. But you know, it's useful to be able to work with open contours just for reference in your sketches. So the way we get around this is we use something called construction geometry. So I'm going to right click on this line and hit the button in this pop-up that says construction geometry. You'll see it shows a regular line and a dashed line. And you'll see that the appearance of my line changes. If you've taken DTC, you might recognize this as how we show hidden lines in technical drawings. But basically, this tells SOLIDWORKS that once you go into 3D, you can ignore this line. But functionally in a sketch, when working with it, it stays the same. So if I try to mirror this, I'll pick my rectangle to mirror it about that line, and you'll see it works just the same. But to demonstrate, if I went out into the 3D and I tried to extrude the sketch, you'll see that all my rectangles are extruded, but this construction line stays in the 2D. Awesome. So I'm going to go back into my sketch, clear a palette so we can take a look at our next tool, Offset Entities. Going to quickly draw us a nice polygon. And you'll see that construction geometry shows up everywhere. In this case, this polygon is defined by a circle, but we don't want that circle to show up in like whatever we use this polygon for in the end. So it's defined as construction geometry. And I'm actually going to delete that for simplicity's sake. But offset entities lets us take this hexagon and just offset it bigger or smaller by however much you want. You'll see a whole bunch of options. I'm going to select this really quick that you can play around with on your own, but I'll go through some of the important ones. This box up here lets you choose how much you're offset by, whether it's 20 or 50, 100. You can actually offset inwards by reversing the direction. Make sure to not go too big when you're going inwards, otherwise it just won't show up because it's impossible to actually create. Or you can go bidirectional. And ta-da, you get a nice little small hexagon with that tool. Okay. The last tool we're going to go over is called Trim Entities. So Trim Entities lets us cut out entities or sections of entities in our sketch. If I click on Trim Entities here, you'll see that there's a bunch of different options that I'll go over really quickly. Power Trim lets us draw a line. You'll see this gray line that's falling behind my cursor, and whatever intersects with that line will be trimmed from our shape. You'll see that circle just went away. Do notice that this arc stayed here. As soon as the circle intersected with the rectangle, it stopped being trimmed. So to get rid of this arc, I'll have to trim it by itself. With this tool, you can also actually extend lines. So if I click and hold on this line and drag upwards, I can add another section of the line. And I'm gonna trim it right back. The next tool is corner. So let's say I want to take these two rectangles and make a nice little merged rectangle blob. What corner lets us do is pick two intersecting lines, and the halves we select on the intersection will be kept, and the halves that we don't will be tossed away. It might be a bit confusing, so just to show, I want to keep the outsides of these two lines. I'm going to click here, and you'll see that the insides sort of disappeared. And I'll do the same over here, leaving us with a nice little polygon. Okay, for the next three tools, I'm going to draw us a new sketch. So you saw trim away inside and trim away outside. those actually require two bounding entities. And these basically serve to tell SOLIDWORKS that, hey, these are the limits of where I want to trim. So I'm going to pick these two lines as my bounding lines, and I want to trim this one inside. And so that will get rid of the section of the line that's inside my two boundary lines. If I want to trim away outside, similar story, it'll trim away what's on the outside. The last option on our list is trim to closest. It functions very similarly to power trim. The stuff you select will be trimmed to the closest intersecting point. However, instead of being able to go all willy-nilly and draw lines everywhere, you have to select your trimming one by one. And lastly, you have some options with construction geometry down here that you're welcome to play with. If you want to keep something for reference, but not like for the final product, you can turn it into construction geometry instead of getting rid of it completely. And you can also choose to not trim construction geometry at all because you know it's not going to show up in the end. Yeah. So trim, offset, and mirror might not show up as commonly as your shape and general sketching tools, but they're really useful for making sketching faster and more efficient. Yeah. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.